Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Adventures. And today we're going to be playing Planet Zoo. We're going to be doing part 22 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights, and we got some pretty interesting stack here today. Some fishies and some mammals, and I think we got a pretty cool lot today. So we're going to be starting with a couple of different subspecies or species, depending on who you ask. We're going into the taxonomy there. So these were both done by Frazzle64. We're going to be starting with the Trans-Caspian Ural, also known as the Afghan Ural, from Afghanistan. So you can see the difference here. You can see the subspecies name is Ovis virginii aracal, but the full species name for this guy is Ovis cyclurus, or Siloceros, I believe that's how it's actually pronounced, Siloceros. And these guys live around Afghanistan. So it could be two subspecies. There's Cyclurus can be found in northeastern Afghanistan and southeastern Pakistan, and around that area. It's really cool. You can see the difference here compared to the other one. We'll take a look in a minute. We can see that we've got this really cool rounded horns and all that. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. So yeah, we're going to be moving on to the Punjab locale, which is scientific name is Ovis punjabensis, and we can see the difference here. We can see it's got like this less rounded horn, so it kind of just goes half moon shape rather than coming up like that. We can see it's also got a darker dewlap or tuft of hair down here, and then we can see it's also just not quite as hairy. And these guys are found around the Indus River in Punjab in the region of Pakistan, so that's pretty cool. And we can have a look at the babies here. So look at this wonderful baby. So we can see that one's a little bit more, but not too dissimilar. You can see the female differences. Slightly bigger horns. Wonderful. She's slightly smaller, a little bit leaner and meaner. So now let's move on to the next animal. Let's grab this. We got the pumpkin seed. Let's grab over here. So this one was done by Leaf, Phonetic, and Tom. So this was originally like a Zoo Tycoon mod, and Leaf ported it into Planet Zoo as a new species. So the pumpkin seed is also referred to as the pond perch, or the common sunfish, or the pinky. So they have a natural range in North America from New Brunswick down to the east coast of South Carolina, and they live through Iowa and Pennsylvania, and can now be found around Washington and Oregon at the Pacific coast and the Atlantic coast, and are primarily found in the northeastern United States, even though there is an invasive population in Europe, and they outcompete native fish. So that's a big issue for these guys. They're considered an invasive species. They can get decently sized. They can get about 4 inches or 10 centimeters long. Can then grow up to 11 centimeters or 28 inches. So they typically weigh about a pound, about 450 grams, and the world record being 1 pound 8 ounces, which is 680 grams. And they have this really cool spectacle belly that gives the name the pumpkin seed. You can see they've got this orangey color that kind of looks like pumpkin seeds. It's really cool. So these guys live in warm, calm lakes with ponds, pools of creeks, and small rivers with plenty of vegetation. They prefer clear water where they can find shelter to hide. They tend to stay near the shore and can be found in numbers within shallow and protected areas. And they will feed all water levels on the surface at the bottom of daylight. And then the heaviest feeding being in the afternoon. And then they usually travel in schools that include bluegills, which we covered last episode, and southern sunfish. And these guys actually tolerate low oxygen levels better than bluegills, but are less tolerant to warm water, so that's kind of how they speciate almost. So groups of young fish will school close to the adults, but the adults tend to travel in groups of 2 to 4 in slightly deeper yet still covered water. And they're active throughout the day, and they rest at night by hiding in near the bottom and protected logs and rocks. So these guys really can eat whatever they can. They eat really like insects, mosquito larvae, small mollusk and crustaceans, minnow fry, and even other smaller pumpkin seeds. And they've been known to eat small crayfish and even small bits of vegetation, as well as small frogs and tadpoles. So they live in waters with larger gastropods that have larger mouths and associated muscles to crack the skull, cracks the shells of the larger gastropods. So there is a little bit of evolution going there, which is pretty cool. So luckily these guys are considered very common and not listed as CITES. It's considered least concern, so that means they're very, very common. But things like shoreline and development can be a big issue for these guys, especially erosion for heavy lake use. And they are susceptible to silt and pollution. That makes them a good indicator, like sort of like a canary in the coal mine, or a species that can really tell the healthiness of a habitat. So they've got some really cool adaptations as well. You can see that they've got this big eye spot here that they use to scare away predators. I think a really cool animal. Cool little pumpkin seed. So now we're going to move on to another species. This one was done by Leaf and Arcadia, or Africa, or however it's weirdly spelled. We've got the Red-Bellied Piranha. The Red-Bellied Piranha is native to South America, found in the Amazon, Paraguay, and Esquiela basins, also found in coastal rivers from northeastern Brazil. They're locally abundant in freshwater habitats and even outcompete, can be the most common species of fish in some areas. They are omnivorous and feed on insects, worms, crustaceans, and fish. They're not very much a migratory species, but they do seek out conditions conducive to breeding and spawning during periods of increased rainfall. And one very common thing that these guys are kind of famous for, if you've seen like any piranha movie ever, they're famous for ripping like animals apart, and they've been known to rip apart like egrets and herons and even capybara. But they don't do that very often. They're very opportunistic. And they also have really cool aquatic communications that are somewhat exhibited as like aggressive, and they have a reputation of this ferocious predator that is not actually the case, and can be a pretty good popular aquarium fish. So these guys can also get pretty big. The species can reach about 3.9 kilos in weight and about 50 centimeters long, or 20 inches, but they rarely surpass 35 centimeters or 20 inches. So they get their obviously red-bellied piranha because they have this red belly to them. And they're not a migratory species, as I mentioned, but they do pretty much just, when they need to breed, they will look for the perfect conditions. And they are omnivorous and primarily foragers, so they pretty much eat anything. Their main diet includes insects, worms, crustaceans, and fish. And in packs of hundreds, they've been known to feed on animals as large as capybara and egrets. And despite this reputation of being a dangerous carnivore, they're actually a scavenger and a forager, so they usually only eat plants and insects during the raining season when food is abundant. They also tend to prey on weak, injured, dying, or dead animals, and do not stay in groups in order to pack hunt, but instead, versus protection, they group to protect themselves against other predators. So yeah, that's why they shoal so much, and they is a defense against larger animals like dolphins, caiman, and other large fish, even aquatic birds. And when they reproduce, it's mostly unknown, but they have been seen in an aquarium reproducing. So they're usually able to breed by time once a year, by the time they're 1 year old, and they will lay several thousand eggs near water plants and the eggs stick, and then the male will come and fertilize the juvenile. Let's move it to another one that's swimming over here. Oh, I needed that cough. Oh. There you are. So the male will come on and fertilize its eggs, and just 2 to 3 days after the eggs hatch, the juvenile piranha will hide in the plants and defend themselves, and pretty much will hide from predators lurking. They have 2 annual reproductive seasons, which these seasons are tied to water level fluctuations, the flooding pulse, temperature, and other hydrological conditions. And when individuals are ready to become sexually active, they lose their red coloration and select habitats that are conducive to spawning, such as flooded marginal grasses and vegetation within lakes. The habitat selection is clear distinction from non-reproductive individuals that prefer open water and underflowing meadows. So that's how you can tell a breeding and a non-breeding one apart. So they have this really cool way of communicating. They use like acoustic communication, so they can use pretty much their swim bladder as like a resonator, and they're able to create 3 different sounds. There's like a drumming like sound, there's like a low frequency harmonic sound, and really cool 3 different sounds that come at 3 different hertz that can usually use as aggression between individuals. And I think it's really cool that they're studying like acoustic communication on fish. And luckily these guys are very locally abundant in some areas. They're the most common fish species, and the collection and trade of species may be locally risk for these species, but generally they're doing very, very well. And in aquariums they pretty much just eat whatever they're given. They can eat live, fresh, frozen food types. And they are messy eaters, so they need to have high quality water. But these are wonderful animals. Really, really cool. And we've got another rare animal here today. We have got the... This one is by Leaf and Nicholas Lion Rider. We have got... Where are they? Here they are. This is the Cozumel raccoon, also known as the Cozumel Island raccoon or the pygmy raccoon. So these are a really cool little species. They're very much smaller than your common raccoon. They can get to... Adults will range around 58 to 82 centimeters long, or 23 to 32 inches of total length. That includes including a 23 to 26 centimeter or 9 to 10 inch tail, and weigh between 3 and 4 kilograms. And a really, really interesting example of insular dwarfism, which is animals, when they get isolated on islands, they'll become smaller to cope with the less amount of food. So they are on average 18% shorter and 45% lighter than the common raccoon subspecies, or just the local raccoon population that lives on the Yucatan Peninsula. And they also exhibit sexual dimorphism, with males being about 20% heavier than females. And you can see other differences. They just look a lot leaner, not quite as big, and really wonderful animal. These guys are considered critically endangered. In fact, there's only about 250 to 300 left on the planet. They're extremely endangered because they live in the very small Cozumel Island, which is an island about 478 kilometers in area that lies off the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. And this island also supports a lot of other cool animals, such as the dwarf coyote and the dwarf gray fox. And it's really interesting because most of these kind of islands usually lack terrestrial mammals, specifically carnivores, so this makes it really unique. So these guys inhabit a range of habitats, primarily limited to the mangrove forests and sandy wetlands on the northwest tip of the island, and have been captured in the semi-evergreen forest and agricultural land surrounding these habitats. There's not that much known about these raccoons. They are primarily nocturnal and solitary, but may sometimes form family groups consisting of mothers and cubs. You having a good sleep there? There they are. Pretty cute. So the raccoons live in densities about 17 to 27 individuals per kilometer squared, and inhabit home ranges of about 170 acres or 67 hectares on average. And they don't appear to defend these territories, and their close relatives, the common raccoon, can exist in very high densities when food is abundant. So even though there's been no detailed studies on their reproductive habits, the females give birth primarily between November and January, with possibly a second litter if they're doing well in the second month, in the summer months. So yeah, it's a really nice raccoon. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So their habitat specifically really restricts the food that these guys eat, but their overall diet really consists of crabs, fish, frogs, lizards, and insects. And they're the general omnivores, but crabs make up most of their diet. And their diet is also somewhat seasonal. So during the wet season, when fruit and vegetation is more abundant, they'll eat a lot more of that. And in the dry season, they'll consume more crabs, insects, lizards, etc. And the crabs consisting half of their food could have an effect on their island distribution, where they stay near water where crabs are abundant. So its conservation status, they used to be the top predator almost of these of this Cozumel Island, and there has been a big rate of development that's really affected these guys, and now they're only really found on the northwest corner of the island, and there's no law protecting these guys. But new threats to their survival as well is that there are recent years of disease and parasites, with feral cats and domestic dogs transmitting diseases to raccoons, and that can be very dangerous. But there have been some conservation actions in place. There's one they're trying to eliminate human impact on these mangrove forests where they live, and they've actually been trying to also breed them in captivity, seeing if they're willing to reproduce, like the common raccoon. And the arrival of pets and feral cats have brought diseases, as I mentioned, and the biggest method of reducing them is to remove as many feral cats as possible, because mostly pet cats are well managed and they don't really have diseases. So as long as you get rid of feral cats, it's okay. So yeah, I think that's a really cool, wonderful raccoon. We can wait for... No, we don't want to wait for the baby. But these are wonderful. You can download this yourself. Wonderful, wonderful animal. So next we have got the Adelie penguin by Leaf and Bubbly Wums. So the ones that are really big are actually the juveniles because you can't change the size. So just have a look at these looks. So look at this wonderful guy. So there are species of penguin that are common across the entire Antarctic coast and are the most widely spread penguin in the world, along with the emperor penguin, and the most southerly distributed penguin, along with the emperor penguin. So these guys are generally a mid-sized penguin. They get between 46 and 71 centimeters long, or 18 to 28 inches, and weigh between 3.6 to 6 kilograms, or 7.9 to 13.2 pounds in weight. They have these really distinctive markings here. You can see the white rings surrounding their eyes, along with the feathers around the base of the bill like that. Looks really cool. The long feathers hide most of that bill, but the tail's a little longer than other penguins as well. And it looks almost like a tuxedo, so that makes them look fresh. They're actually a very agile penguins as well. They can swim about 5 miles per hour or 8 kilometers, and can leap some 3 meters in the air onto rocks and ice. So they're mainly known to feed on Antarctic krill, ice krill, Arctic silverfish, sea krill, and glacial squid. And stable isotopes of record of fossil eggshells accumulated over colonies of about 38,000 years reveals a sudden change from a fish-based diet to a krill-based diet that happened about 200 years ago, which was most likely due to the decline of Arctic fur seals since the 18th century and the baleen whales due to the 20th century, which reduced the competition for these fish and resulted in a surplus of krill, which means that penguins can easily exploit this food source. So that's a really cool example of how humans have impacted the environment, especially the guys that live. So jellyfish can be found, including species of the genera Cyclosaura and Sonara, I believe that's pronounced it, were found as commonly sought out items, and similar preferences can be found in little penguins, yellow-eyed penguins, and Magellan penguins. So these guys are regularly preyed upon by animals like South Polar scooters, giant petrels, orcas, Cape gulls, and southern sherbels can prey on the eggs, but mainly adults are eaten by South Polar scooters and leopard seals. So that's very dangerous. So there's estimated their population is about 3.79 million breeding pairs and 251 colonies across Antarctica and some Antarctic islands. So they usually breed between October and February on shores of the Antarctic continent. Adelie penguins build nests out of stone, and these 2 eggs are laid and then incubated from 32 to 34 days, and the parents take turns taking care of the baby, and the chick will remain in the nest for about 22 days until they join creches, and they melt into their juvenile plumage and go out to sea in about 50 or 60 days. Is there any swimming right now? I don't see any swimming. Oh, there we are. Let's have a look at one swimming. No, that's not what I wanted to do. There we are. Wonderful penguin. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers them. So they're doing very, very well. There's millions of them, but there's at least concern. But things like climate change can drastically affect these guys, especially with the melting of Antarctic sea ice, which relies on the krill that these guys have learned to feed on, and also the impact of losing whales and seals. As you can see, that had an impact on these guys and changed their diets. So a lot of those impacts can be measured and really need to be monitored. So yeah, really cool animal. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So that was, yeah, leaf and bubbly ones. This next one, the Nile crocodile, was done by Chicago, Zohan, and Megarex Gaming. Let's see if we can see this wonderful Nile crocodile. So these guys are a very, very large freshwater crocodile that are present in 26 countries across Africa. So they have a considered least concern because they're so common, and are widely distributed across sub-Saharan Africa, occurring mostly in central, eastern, and southern regions, and live in all sorts of different habitats such as lakes, rivers, swamps, and marshlands. So although capable of living in salty environments, the species is rarely found in saltwater, but it can occasionally inhabit deltas and brackish lakes, and the range of the species goes from northward towards the Nile, as far north as the Nile Delta, and these guys can also get pretty big as well. On average, the male Nile crocodile can get between 3.5 and 5 meters long, or 11.5 feet to 16.4 feet in length, and weigh up to 225 to 750 kilograms, or 500 to 1,650 pounds. However, specimens exceeding 6.1 meters or 20 feet in length and weighing up to over a ton, 1,089 kilograms or 2,400 pounds, have been recorded. They are the largest freshwater predator in Africa and are the second largest extant reptile, second only to the saltwater crocodile. And sexual dimorphism is pretty prevalent in these animals. They can get to about like 20%, 30% smaller than the males, the females are, and they have these really cool thick leathery and scaly skin with these osteoderms that all crocodiles have. It's really wonderful. So these guys are also opportunistic apex predators and a very aggressive species of crocodile. They're capable of taking on pretty much anything. The diet usually consists of many different species of fish, reptile, birds, mammals, and are ambush predators that can wait for hours, days, and weeks for a meal to come and strike, and then they'll suddenly attack and get it. And they are also very agile and wait for the opportunity for prey to come very close, and then even swift prey are not immune to this attack because they're very good at waiting and then striking. That's how crocodiles have been so successful. Like other crocodiles, Nile crocodiles have an extremely powerful bite that's very unique among other animals. See where the female is. While we're waiting. Is she swimming? Yeah, she's swimming. Look at that. Cool. So, like other crocodiles, they have an extremely powerful bite that is unique, and they have these sharp conical teeth that you can see here, that when she's kind of swimming in place, that gives us a good example to look, that allow the grip to the animal to almost impossible to loosen, so they're very, very good at trapping animals in their jaws, and it can apply a high level of force for extended periods of time, and can hold prey underwater to drown. And also they do death rolls, where they roll around and try and rip parts of their prey off and kill them. And they're actually also pretty social for crocodiles. They share basking spots in large food sources, such as schools of fish and big carcasses, and they have a strict hierarchy determined by their size. So large old males are usually the top of the hierarchy and have the best access to foods and basking spots, and crocodiles tend to respect this order, and if it's infringed they can be violent and fatal for these guys. And like most other reptiles, Nile crocodiles lay eggs, which are guarded by the females. The hatchlings are protected for a period of time, but allowed to hunt for themselves and not fed by the parents, so the parents will just keep an eye on them while the kids go hunt like whatever they can find, usually insects, small fish, things like that. And they're considered the most dangerous crocodile species and are responsible for hundreds of human deaths every year, and are a very common species of reptile, but are not endangered, but despite some regions nil declines and extinction. You see a pretty cool croco. It looks like she's going to have juveniles. Let's see if we can beat it to her. She's probably not going to have a baby, so we'll just carry on. Just carry on. And we'd be looking at, this one was also done by TNT. We have got the Dimetrodon. So we've got an extinct animal here. We can see the babies. Look at these babies. He's so cute. We'll have a look at them soon. So we have got the Dimetrodon. So the Dimetrodon is an extinct genus of non-mammalian synapsids. So a synapsid includes mammals like us, and these are sort of like really basal to the tree. These guys are from the early Permian, from about 295 to 272 million years ago, and a member of Sphenodontidae. The most prominent feature you can see is there's really tall neural spines that they have here, and that extend from the vertebra. They walk on their four legs, and you can see they have these really, really tall curved skulls with large different teeth of different shapes along the jaw, which is really cool. Most fossils of these guys have been found in the southwestern United States, a majority of them coming from the red beds of Texas and Oklahoma, though most recently there have been some found from Germany, and over a dozen species have been named after the genus was first erected in 1878. These guys are oftenly mistaken as a dinosaur or a contemporary of dinosaurs, but went extinct 40 million years before the first appearance of the dinosaurs in the Jurassic period. Even though they also do look very reptilian in a sense, they are actually more closely related to mammals as to modern reptiles, although not a direct ancestor of us. So they're usually considered non-mammalian synapsids, the group traditionally called mammal-like reptiles. And so these guys group together with mammals in a clade called synapsia, with dinosaurs and reptiles and birds being in a separate clade called sauropsia. And the reason you can tell, if I can't see the skull here, but usually it's to do with the temporal fenestrae, which are the holes in the back of the skull there. In animals like dinosaurs, reptiles, and birds, there's usually 2. In synapsids, there's usually only 1. And this is one of the earliest features and the main reason why these guys are considered sauropsids. So that's why they are pretty much considered the most basal and distinguish them from mammals. So these guys were also probably the apex predator ecosystems, like the equivalent to tigers today. They are fed on fish and tetrapods, including reptiles and amphibians, and it's very possible that different species within this genus may have had many different ecological roles. And one thing that's been a real big question about these guys is the sail, and it's often been thought to be a way of thermoregulation and being used to help heat or cool the body, so they can like put this in the sun and heat the body, or they could put it in the shade and help cool down easier. But some recent studies argue that the sail would be ineffective since the animal's already pretty large, and a lot of people have then suggested that it was used as a courtship display. So these guys probably used them, brought them bright colours on them, maybe even did funny dances to attract mates. And also could have been used to signal like any other thing. So a lot of these structures, if you can see in nature, they're used to signal things. Let's even find the baby. Where's the baby gone? I'm trying to find the baby. Where's the baby? Where's the baby? Where's the baby? There's the baby. There's the baby. That's a good baby. Look at this cutie. It's a really cool mod. Dimetrodon's a cool animal. How can you not love Dimetrodon? It looks pretty well too. Oh. Look at you walking and talking. So, last but most definitely not least, this was done by Zevramont, originally as a Zoo Tycoon model, and imported into Planet Zoo by Leaf. We have got the great white shark. A wonderful animal. They're probably coming out for a feed now, by the looks of it. But we'll just have to go with it. So, also known as the white shark, or the great white, or the white pointer, they're a large mackerel shark that can be found in coastal surface waters across all the world's oceans. They are very notable for their size, and they can get genuinely pretty enormous. So, female individuals can grow up to 6.1 meters long and weigh between 1.905 kilograms to 2,268 kilograms, or 4,200 or 5,000 pounds at maturity. And most males generally tend to be small, measuring 3.4 to 4 meters or 11 to 13 feet long, with females also weighing, female males measuring 4.6 to 4.9 meters or 15 to 16 feet. And according to some recent studies, these guys have been estimated to live for about 70 years, well above previous estimates, makes them the longest living cartilaginous fish, or a fish that only has cartilage in its skeleton. Just wait, you swim? I want to see you dive and have a swim. Come on, do it for me. So, and according to the same study, male great whites take about 26 years to reach sexual maturity, while females take 33 to be ready to produce offspring. So they're very, very slow breeders, and that could be a big risk for a lot of other conservation issues that we'll mention. And great whites can swim at speeds of 25 kilometers an hour or 16 miles per hour, and for short bursts and at depths of 1,200 meters or 3,900 feet. So luckily these great white sharks have no natural predators other than very rare occasions orcas will hunt these guys, and they're arguably the world's largest extant macropredatory fish. That means the largest fish today that eats large animals, not like whale sharks that only eat small krill and plankton and things like that. Well, they don't eat krill because they don't live in areas with krill, but small fish and plankton. So, and they primarily prey on, as they become adults, they usually prey on marine mammals, up to the size of large baleen whales. They've also been known to prey on a variety of other animals, including fish and seabirds, but in fact, younger great white sharks will eat primarily eat fish, and as they grow to adults, they'll eat like seals and dolphins and things like that. And they're the only known surviving member of the genus Carcharodon, and are responsible for more human bites attacks than any other sharks. So let's see if we can find the babies. Look at these babies. So let's find wonderful little babies. Lots of information on these sharks. So these guys, were, as I mentioned, they usually take about 26 to 33 years to mature, depending on the gender. And there's not very much known about their breeding habits. And they usually are kind of suspected, due to like eyewitness accounts and stuff, that great white sharks mate in shallow water away from feeding areas and continually roll belly to belly during copulation. Though birth has never been observed, they are ovoviviparous, which means the egg develop and hatch within the uterus and continue to develop until birth. And the great white shark has about an 11-month gestation period. And the unborn shark, they develop powerful jaws within the first month, and they practice autophagy, which means they feed on the ova produced by the mother, where the mother gives birth to them in spring and summer. And the largest number of pups recorded from a single mother was 14 pups. The mother was measuring 4.5 meters long and 15 feet. That was killed off Taiwan in 2019. Very sad. So the Northern Pacific great whites are suspected to breed off the Sea of Cortez, as evidenced by a local fisherman who has caught them, and evidenced by teeth at dump sites and that. So, as I mentioned, they're the most responsible for human shark bites and kills, and that kind of led to these Jaws, the concept of Jaws, which include the movie and stuff, where sharks are kind of extremely dangerous, which do not mistake humans for seals, even though that's like a common thing. Many bites occur in water that impairs the shark's senses, and they do not like the taste of human. They're not very likely to eat humans. And actually, humans, for the most part, are too bony for their liking. They really like animals like seals and dolphins that are very fatty and rich in protein. And humans are not appropriate prey because the shark's digestion is too slow to cope with the high rate of bone to muscle and fat in humans compared to animals like seals. And according to the most recorded shark bite incidents, great whites broke off contact after the first bite, and the fatalities are usually caused by blood loss from the initial bite or critical organ loss from whole consumption. So usually they usually will not eat people. They might just give you a test bite, and if you're a great white shark that's 6 meters long, a test bite is taking your leg off. So it's really hard to try and be safe around that. And very, very sadly, a lot of times people used to really control sharks. There was shark culling, and to try and protect the marine ecosystem, which we know is obsolete, cruel, and ineffective. And many species, including dolphins, turtles, and etc., things like that, were often killed in these programs. And it's very, very dangerous. We're not running for the shark, and often even tourism. Now they're really starting to benefit. They're really trying to be managed, but they're luckily shark tourism these days. You can go to places, and actually, believe it or not, the tourism has really gone up for these guys, so you can take boats and go into shark cages and swim with great white sharks. This is one thing I've very much wanted to do. Might have to put that in the video, but that's really cool. So they're considered vulnerable, and you need a CITES permit to trade with these species, even though we have no really good idea of their population just because there's no accurate numbers. But they're very slow breeding, and they often, since they're so big and slow breeding, it can be very hard to replace populations if numbers are taken. So that's why they're considered vulnerable. And they are fully protected in places like New Zealand and North America and Australia, at least. So that's very, very good for them. And in New Zealand, they're considered nationally endangered, with a stable population between 1,500 mature individuals. And the estimates for populations, especially in like California, is about 2,400. And in 2015, actually, Massachusetts banned cage diving, catching, feeding, towing decoys, or baiting and chumming these sharks because for its significant and highly predicted migratory great white population without an appropriate permit, and the goal is to protect the sharks and public health. So there is sort of a big stigma about these guys being deadly predators. I'll have a look at this one here. But luckily, there are people that are advocating for these sharks, and they're just wonderful animals. They're very important to marine ecosystems. They regulate the numbers of fish, and if we lose them, we'll just lose health in the ocean. They're a very, very important species in that regard. So I believe this would be actually a good place to finish. So think we should move out now. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to get that little bell icon to get notified when you're uploading thing. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.